Good day, everyone. My name is De Yvonne Rivers. I'm your host for Birth Moms Real Talk. This is the Facebook live chat, and we've got some awesome moms on today to talk about Mother's Day. What are you doing? And I say that, wait, because what do we do on Mother's Day as birth moms? As you well know, Birth Moms Will Talk podcast, that's where birth mothers and the platform for birth mothers to share their story, to share their journeys. And we come in different color sizes, ages, number of years replaced, and so forth, whether it's open, closed, but we're still moms. And Mother's Day is coming in actually 2 weeks. In 2 weeks. And we wanted to have this conversation to open it up. And I always will say, we allow you to tune in live to listen to probably conversations you may have never heard before. Birth moms talking about their children, how it may affect them just in general, lifelong, but specifically around Mother's Day or our children's birthdays and all of that. So I'm going to really allow the moms to give a short bio of who they are and where they don't have to say where they're calling, but they're all across the United States. I'll just say that they're all across the United States. Share a little bit about for us when they place, and really how they celebrate Mother's Day. Let's go to you, Laura.
Hi, I'm Laura Engel, and I'm a birth mom. My son was born in 1967, and we did have a reunion in 2016, and it was probably the best Mother's Day of my life. Um, the following Mother's Day, because all of my sons were accounted for.
Very good, very good. Thank you, Ashley. Would you share?
I'm Ashley, and my daughter is 2.5, so and I did not voluntarily place her necessarily. I mean, it was, but it's a long story. But on Mother's Day in the past year, I haven't received any call or any acknowledgement, and that's okay. I have to accept that for what it is. And I'm in the process of accepting the entire thing instead of going into a dark hole of depression, so to speak. So
Good to have you here. This
thank
is the
you.
place to be with other moms who do understand. And we're going to talk about that for us, whether we hear from our child or whether we hear from people around us, because I got a different spin, or I'll ask some questions because a lot of times if raising children, they don't even say Mother's Day to you or ask. Ruby.
Hi, I'm so glad to be here. My name is Ruby Lee Cornelius, and I surrendered my daughter to adoption in 1971. And I remember that first Mother's Day. It was March. She was born in March. So just a couple months later was Mother's Day. And I still remember the way I felt when my sisters-in-law and my sister and my mother, everyone was celebrating Mother's Day, but nobody mentioned my being a mother. I reunited with my daughter in 1994, and I reunited in January, and that first Mother's Day, like I heard Laura say, was a great big deal because for the first time I was in communication with all three of my children.
Very good. Thank you, Ruby. Angie.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Yvonne, for having us. And it's so good to be here with the other ladies. I'm Angie Swanson Kiriako, and I use she, her pronouns. I placed my daughter for adoption in January of 1998. We've been in reunion for about 10 years now. And I would say Mother's Day has always been really complicated for me, even before I was a birth mother. And I can get into that later. That's a long story, but different feelings every year. Okay. That's often what I experience.
Okay. Very good. Very good. I don't say everybody knows me, but you probably know my story too. Actually, in place in 73. So it's been 49 years for me. And I didn't have other children. So that was my only child. And so I experienced, and I think who was it, just Ruby who just said, that didn't get the Happy Mother's Day or even inquire, are you a mom? And back again, if you're listening to my podcast, my family didn't even acknowledge or give support, I simply announced when I came home from the hospital. No one asked me. I have a son. So I've always said I've had a son. I've always did in journals and whatever that I have a son and I will find him one day. Had no clue how, when, what, where, but just truly believe. And so when I did, it was, as you say, for is that next Mother's Day to be able to be in communication with my son. Awesome. The years past, it's pretty much been and having some connection. One particular Mother's Day, I actually gave him his family tree.
Mm.
That was the whole thing of giving him his history with that. So, how do we celebrate Mother's Day? What do we do? Are we on edge waiting to hear, or do we reach out ourselves, or and more specifics? This is time you can extend and talk more. So, whoever wants to share, tell some of your experiences or what's going on now. This is 2 weeks before. I know I get a little anxious. I think my body gets a little anxious, and it's like, okay, it's in 2 weeks, and all of that. So what's going on now with all of you with Mother's Day coming up? And let's throw in that birth Mother's Day, that Saturday before. Let's throw that in and get some opinions, because let's hear yours first, and I'll tell you mine.
I'd like to tell you about my Mother's Day. I have to say I'm very lucky. I have 3 other birth sons and 2 bonus children, and so they're all middle aged now.
Bonus children.
Yeah, my
When you explain
stepchildren.
that, you say that.
Mhm.
That's
So I'm
bonus children.
I'm
So
all
can
over
I get a bonus?
I'm all over the place with children, but you know, uh, I'm very fortunate because my sons have always made a big deal of me on Mother's Day since they've been adults. And
You
I'll
didn't
be honest,
explain bonus children, Laura.
the bonus children, that's my stepchildren.
Oh, okay.
Oh.
I'm still waiting for the bonus
Did you
children.
think it was
Okay.
my husband? No, no,
I
it's
don't know.
yeah, because he's like a child too. I guess I should say 3 bonus children.
Okay. Okay.
Now, my stepchildren, I have
Okay.
a
Okay.
stepson and stepdaughter that I raised since they were 6, 9 years old. So they're my
Okay.
children.
Okay.
But we always have a fun Mother's Day, usually, you know. And last year was really tough because my son, my first son, who I had relinquished for adoption, was not in the picture again. But every year was really tough for me before we reunited. Every year was hard. Um, Even though I was happy my other children who were so wonderful were here, there was always something missing. And I couldn't talk about it because they didn't know.
Okay. I was going to ask that question. Were they aware to even
No,
acknowledge your maybe sadness that day?
no.
Okay.
Now they are, of course, and
Okay.
it's easier. But Mother's Day was always kind of conflicted for me. And you know what you said earlier, Yvonne, about the muscle memory?
Hmm.
It's like, even if I didn't know exactly what was wrong, there was this uneasy feeling if something was missing. And I I couldn't explain it to even to myself because I honestly thought I would never reunite with my son because it was a closed adoption. I had no idea where he lived. And I kept telling myself, get over it. Look how lucky you are. And I am with my other children. But there was still always that missing piece. And this year, there'll be a missing piece again.
Right.
So,
Right. Understood. How about someone else?
Um, Thank you for that, Laura. It's just so great to hear other people talk about what I've experienced out loud and
Right.
in public.
Out loud. Yes.
Mhm.
Um, I have similar feelings about it and experiences. The first few years after I surrendered my daughter, Mother's Day was just so painful because I didn't talk about it. I had a couple of friends that I stayed in communication with from the maternity home that I stayed in for 5 months. So we would connect with each other, and that was helpful. So and we had that support group, and I still am in contact with the one surviving mom.
Okay.
And so that helped. But in my own family, that secret was completely swept under the rug.
Mhm.
And in 1975, I celebrated Mother's Day in the open after my son was born in September of 74. But the same thing, it's like
Mhm.
it felt, and when I had my first child, my first out in public child, and I was, everyone was giving me all this advice before childbirth and telling me what it was going to be like. And
Mhm.
I remember, I remember how difficult that was to just hold
Right.
it in. Like, you don't have to tell me. Been there, done that.
Mhm.
Right.
Um,
Right.
but but that missing link, and
Mhm.
constantly reminding myself, be grateful, and then I had a daughter subsequently, be grateful for these children, but always that sadness, always
Mhm.
that missing link.
Was that be grateful you talking to yourself, or maybe what society had planted in you?
Oh, I'm pretty sure my self-talk came from society, and
Okay. Okay.
I'm pretty
Okay.
sure about that because that was part of the narrative, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
You're going to leave here. You don't have to ever think about this again. It's over. Get on with your life and make something of yourself.
Right. Right. Yeah. Indeed. How about you, Angie or Ashley?
Oh gosh, I have, I've had a really complicated relationship with my mother from the get go, and I'm an only child.
Okay.
And so that's made Mother's Day complicated as we've been
Mm.
estranged for decades now at this
Wow.
point.
I'm
And
glad you mentioned that. I want you to talk further about it because
yeah,
we're talking about ourselves being mothers. What about our mothers? Because Mother's Day is
right,
for all mothers. So, what do we do to celebrate whether our moms are with us or not and saying with that? So, speak more about that. Yeah.
right. So, and Mother's Day is just really complicated that
Yeah.
entire weekend. It's
Yeah.
not just about the birth mother piece. There's
Right.
also, if you're a birth mother, it's, like myself, challenging relationship with my mother, or maybe
Mm-hmm.
someone struggling with infertility, or their mother
Mm-hmm.
has recently passed away. Like there's so
Mm-hmm.
many different, things
Yes.
that can intersect for that
Yeah.
holiday.
Yeah.
So I always, I would take some celebration in my friends that as they were starting to have children, and this is before I had my daughter,
Mm-hmm.
but I would take some celebration in them being mothers and, just loving their children and seeing, um, their joy in that day. I also worked in the restaurant industry for a long time, and that was one of the hardest days to work,
Right.
as it seemed.
It's the rest of it's packed on Mother's Day.
Packed,
Yeah.
people had
Yeah.
really bad moods, and it was just really rough, but that would also, in those times, at least I was around with my colleagues, and I had some
Right.
great people I was working with, um, but, after I had my daughter and I was not celebrated or acknowledged at all
Mhm,
for many
mhm,
years,
mhm.
and so I've had to learn. And for a long time, I didn't talk about being a birth mother. So no
Right.
one knew. So I would carry around that silence, on that day. I just would keep to myself. And
So how about the people who did know?
I
Would they
think,
would they say Happy Mother's Day?
for some, I do, I will say, I think for some, they kind of struggle because they don't know,
Uh-huh.
they have good intentions,
Right. Right.
but they don't quite know what to do with it. Although I
Yeah.
do remember, I think it was the first Mother's Day after I had told one of my longtime friends about my daughter, and I had texted her, "Oh, happy Mother's Day." And she wrote back, "Happy Mother's Day." And here's the interesting piece for me. I went to, "Oh, I'm not a mother. That doesn't
Oh,
apply to me."
really? So you
Right?
weren't
Yeah,
ready to receive that then?
right. I was like, "I
Okay.
am not the one raising my daughter. I don't deserve that
Ah,
acknowledgement."
wow.
And that was many, that was 20 something years ago.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Right.
And
Yeah.
so I really, for me, the sort of my evolution, my thoughts around birth Mother's Day and Mother's Day,
Yeah.
that's changed a lot. I think when I first learned of Birth Mother's Day, I
Mhm.
was like, this is the day I have to be this. If you're going to acknowledge me, this is the day you acknowledge me, because I don't deserve to be acknowledged on Sunday, on
Mm.
Mother's Day.
Okay.
And, now I've kind of, again, this is my opinion,
Right.
I've
Mm-hmm.
kind of just, thrown that out. And I think if someone wants to celebrate their birth mother, if
Yep.
Birth Mother's Day is for them, great. If they say no, I want to be acknowledged on Mother's Day, that's great too. If they want to
Uh-huh.
do the whole weekend, that's
Mm-hmm.
wonderful. But I do think it's interesting how there's been that kind of carve out of
Yeah.
that Saturday.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. How about you, Ashley? Can you share your
Um,
experience? It was telling you this new. Well, you have other children, so that's
I
that you can
do.
speak on that. Yeah.
I do, and every day, as far as my 2.5-year-old daughter, this is all new. Every day is the same as far as the pain. It's very painful, no matter if it's Mother's Day or any other day. I've spoken with my therapist about it, and she and I have agreed that it would be best. My story involves a lot of betrayal and a lot of anger, and so I have to work on forgiveness, because it's
Mm-hmm.
going to eat me up if I keep
Yeah.
on with
Yeah.
they owe me an apology. Oh,
Right.
how could they do this to me? So I'm going to be working on forgiveness every
Mm-hmm.
day,
Mm-hmm.
but on Mother's Day, I vowed to do something to really take a step forward on my path to
Okay.
forgiveness. And
Okay.
whether that be writing a long letter and not
Right.
sending
And
it,
not sending it. Yeah.
um, something like that, I'm going to do that. And of course, I have two other children, and it's happy, but at the same time, it's very, very discouraging in a way,
Yeah.
because I'm thinking to myself, again, it's a lot of betrayal in my
Mm-hmm.
story. So I'm thinking, I don't even get a text message. I don't get a phone
Mm-hmm.
call. I don't get a card. I don't get
Mm-hmm.
anything. But you know what?
Mm-hmm.
I don't. And that's just the way it is.
Yeah. This pathway that we all are on is hard. Let's just say it. It's hard. HARD.
Hmm.
Capital HARD.
Hmm.
Reunion is hard. Lifelong. It's just hard. And as we talk about Forrest, when I asked the question about whether family who does know, one thing, a great testimony has come out of the Birth Moms Real Talk podcast. One of my guests was a guest on the podcast, and she sent it to her father to listen to. And after he listened to her podcast, he sent me an email. And the email said her podcast, his daughter, showed him how he had neglected her
Mm.
by not saying Happy Mother's Day to her. He knew she had placed like 20 some odd years past and never had said Happy Mother's Day. And he vowed he will continue from here on in, because through the podcast, he found out how that had hurt her with that. So until when people hear, that's why these stories are so important, because when people listen, whether they know you or not or whatever, but he listened, and because she shared it specifically to him, because she shared her story, and he realized I just didn't do it, and he knew she was a mom, and so that was respecting her and putting her in that mother's position. And again, we talk about the birth Mother's Day, which is that Saturday, and it doesn't matter when it was founded or whatever else and so forth. So I personally, and I have done some things with other mothers. If they want to do a brunch or whatever, we'll do that. I personally want to, and I celebrate it. Actually, I celebrate every day. Every day is a Mother's Day, because we're mothers. I mean, we don't just stop for a day. But I take personal for in celebrating that Sunday, because part of my own experience is this is by being a person of color, I'll put it that way. I don't want one other thing saying this is just for you and you can't
Mm.
celebrate with them somebody else. So I want all the days. I want all the days, as you say, maybe the whole weekend, and all of
Hmm.
that. But we have to determine for us how we're going to do that. And whether it is, maybe before I found my son, and I've always taken, I guess I've been that just vocal person of because I heard the same thing. Move on. You're gonna forget. I just didn't believe them. I didn't believe them because I wasn't forgetting. And I'm like that factual person. You may say something, but if it's another way, I'm going to go that other way. And I always believe, as I said, that I would find him. I clueless on how, but it was 45 years before I did. But yet, it's like, but I've always was a mother, and I would do my routine was a cupcake with a candle on it for his birthday. And for Mother's Day, it was just acknowledging and represent. I wrote a lot, so I did a lot of journaling. So there's a lot of tears and a lot of writing on Mother's Day for me. And purposely in recent days and recent years, even before I found him, is just for me to do something for myself, whatever that is, or even if it's not on the day, as you say, for it's going to a restaurant or whatever, or I do some self-care. I'm gonna get a massage and get a mani-pedi or whatever. It was something for me. I just purposefully to do something for self. And so that's what I would say for is if you had a choice. So what are you planning on doing? It's 2 weeks from now. What are your plans? What are your plans?
I'll hop in. I'll actually be speaking to the congregation of the Unitarian Society in my community, and have been in talks with the Reverend there about how we can ensure that the space in the congregation is inclusive for everyone.
Okay.
So I am in the process of writing, in the really crummy first draft of writing my reflection for that. But yeah, that's going to be this year. That's what I'm doing.
Good. You know what? And I'm not a prediction. This is not a prediction, but just as you heard me say, whenever someone in that audience is going to be grateful that you're there talking.
I think so. If it's one person,
it's someone.
It's someone, whether it's another birth mother that maybe has never shared her story, or an adoptive parent that maybe they're going to do something a little different,
or someone who knows someone in their family. It is so many people that are not, they're not the moms, the adoptees or adoptive parents, but they in that family. And they haven't talked about it. And when this comes in public, that's where so many people will come out. Because before I launched the podcast, I knew it was a need. I knew it was a lot of people out there. I didn't know how many were really ready to talk. I am being flooded with stories now because it's getting momentum. It's been over a year or whatever, over 15,000 downloads, over 250,000 views. It's people are ready. People are ready. Before they were maybe not ready a year ago, 6 months ago, but now for this public. Now, not everybody's ready to tell their public story, but they're ready to get involved in support groups and whatever to share and talk. And I have gotten a couple of the guests on the podcast. That was their first time sharing with anyone in the world. In the world. I remember one particular email. It was just an email and said, I don't know why I'm emailing you. I don't know what I'm doing, but I have got to share my story. I mean, it was like, I got to do it. Then what prompted that doesn't really matter. Doesn't really matter. But we have to really talk about it because talking is healing. Talking is healing. So tell me more about Forest. What's the rest of you going to do? Laura, Ashley, Ruby Lee, what are you going to be doing on that Saturday or Sunday, 2 weeks from now?
Well, sorry.
No, go ahead.
Okay. I'll have a couple things going on for the last several years since I launched my memoir in 2018. I've connected through my book and through my blog with a number of people in the triad. And I have, some who I've become personally involved with either on the phone or via email or via Facebook Messenger, however it is. And so the last couple of years, I have made it a point to reach out to people, on Mother's Day weekend in that, in my little collection of contacts that I've gotten.
Okay.
And that has really helped me. I am estranged from my daughter who I surrendered. So I'm pretty sure I won't be hearing from her on Mother's Day. This has been about 5 years now, but I will be celebrating with my daughter, who actually lives with me. We're in a multi-generational living situation, so I'll be celebrating with her. But I'll tell you what, having met my daughter and been in reunion with her for 25 years before we became estranged, it's harder. Mother's Day is more difficult today. Every day is more difficult now than it was in the unknown days when we didn't know each other, and I didn't know where she was and she didn't know who I was. But I'm it's an effort, but I'm determined. I heal through reaching out to and helping other people heal.
Okay.
Or at least giving them a voice.
Right.
So
Right.
I have to bring that into my Mother's Day weekend. And as I said, pretty much every day.
Absolutely. You know, I'm glad you said that, for us, and helping others does help to heal us, because for years, even before I found my son, after I had given birth, I was, for a period of time, I was married, but was divorced. Family was just always not really communicative. So holidays were very tough for me, and holidays still are. That I became an avid volunteer for some different organizations, like Thanksgiving. I didn't, not that I could have had a place to go, but I would serve Thanksgiving dinner. I would do special Christmas things and whatever, and helping others. So that was healing for me also. Yes, definitely. Go ahead, Laura or Ashley.
I think my Mother's Day, I really don't have any concrete plans. I've been really busy now that my book is at the final, stages. And I was hoping it would come out right at Mother's Day, which it does, right after Mother's Day. But like I said before, I think my other children some of them will come over, and we'll have, fun doing whatever we do. We used to try to go out, but it was crazy, as Angie knows. And we always end up in bad moods. No, the craziness of going out and everything. But I'm a firm believer in helping others. And I know that one of the greatest joys has been for me the fact that when I started writing my story, I'd never spoke about it for 49 years. And I hadn't even journaled about it. When I would journal about it,
Really?
I would use the word N-O for New Orleans. That's how secretive I was.
Wow.
Yes.
So you didn't even mention a city, as if
N-O is all I said.
Wow.
And I knew that was my my own problem. I mean, I was just so secretive and so afraid of, I guess, the guilt that had been placed inside of me and the shame. I was so afraid of people thinking less of me and not realizing, realizing I wasn't who they thought I was, I guess. And anyway, what I was going to say is, on Mother's Day, I like I told you before, I just kept it pushed down. But once I started talking about it, I noticed so many people would come up to me just like you and say, "Oh, thank you you're so brave to tell your story."
Right.
And it was killing me to say it out loud, but at the same time, it was such a relief to say it out loud. And
that's my question: is what caused you to first start talking about it?
Well, when my son found me through Ancestry.com,
okay,
the night he emailed me was the most magical, scary, bizarre night of my life, because as much as I'd wanted to find him all those years, it's like I kind of always thought he would find me. I don't know why. It was in my mind from the time I left the maternity home. And when he found me, it was like immediately, it was so bizarre. From the moment I spoke to him, I didn't care who knew. I wanted everyone to know my son has found me. And I began my husband, thank goodness, was one of the few people in the world that knew about this. So he was, right there next to me the whole time. And he was a rock. But I had to tell the world. I had to tell my children first, of course, and then my friends. but it was like the most explosive emotional thing I've ever lived through. I could barely talk. I was shaking for months.
Mhm.
Um, I went through almost labor pains afterward. I had to go to the
Mhm.
doctor to find out what was causing these sensations in my abdomen, and they never
Mhm.
found anything wrong with me. It
That was your
was,
body speaking to you. You were giving birth
Mm.
again because you then could see your son.
yes. And this is a funny thing, too. Once I spoke about it, within a week after him finding me, my mouth had a red rash around it that I'd never had before. And I went to 3 different dermatologists within a month trying, because it got worse and worse. The more I talked, the worse the rash got.
Mm.
And I honestly think it was everything just leaving me.
Mhm.
It was like a rock had just been, it was like I came alive again. And I started talking about it. And the more I talked, the more people, I realized I had this renewed faith in humanity,
Yeah.
because people would either say to me, "Oh, why didn't you tell me? I'm
Mm.
so, I'm sorry you went through that." Instead of being, like disgusted by me, which I guess I
Right.
was disgusted with myself all those years.
Yeah.
And I am a firm believer that telling those secrets, and I hope that my story helps people because of that, because it shouldn't be a secret. It's,
No, no.
and
Secrets
I,
keep you sick.
exactly.
Secret
And you carry
secrets keep,
that alone, and it's not
yeah.
good.
Now,
No.
when you're the what you spoke of for is, and whether it's rashes or whatever, it's just like in our eating habits. When we go through a cleansing in our body, it sometimes will cause pimples on our skin because the toxicity is coming out of our bodies. So I
Yes.
really look at that as that we are being cleansed every time we talk about our children and don't keep any secrets. Because secrets make you, who knows this? Who is NO or whatever? Who knows this? And are fearful. Who's
Mhm.
going to find out? I don't care.
Me either. It
Get that
took me
attitude, and you
it
just
took me
do
almost
not
70
care.
years to not care.
When you don't care, because you are who you are. And I say this, I know who I am and whose I am, and I know my name. I do not respond to any name called outside of my name, and because that's the attitude that
Mm.
we have to grow to become to. It takes a lot to get there because the society, or whatever you want to call, they're going to say that, as if, for illustration, I'll give you an example. I'm doing my family tree, and I'm going back and doing a lot of family history. And I started looking at my grandmother. My grandmother gave birth to my mother at the age of 14.
Mm.
She was married, but she was at the age of 14. So now let her not have been married. Completely different story.
Mhm.
Completely different story. So a big part, if I say, and you all hear me on the podcast and saying, birth moms, stand your ground to know who you are, and don't allow what these words, I see these little nips on our shoulders speaking into our ears, tell them shut up, or knock them off your shoulder with that, because that's the only way we're going to get through this lifelong thing, because it's lifelong, because it's lifelong. Actually, this is new for you, 2.5 years. So even though I not know you got other children, but yet and still, it's
Yes.
okay.
Like Ruby, I do want to celebrate other people as well. I want to help others when the time's right.
Mhm.
But for now, I have a legal background, and through that, I live in a small town, sort of, and I saw other women who went through similar situations as me, um, just through the courtroom. And so I kept up with a few of these girls just to see, what's going on with them. Of the four I've kept up with, they're all in jail. And I think that is
Mm.
because they may have allowed those feelings to, fester, and they didn't have healthy coping skills. I'm not sure. But I'm gonna make sure to say a special prayer for those girls,
Okay. Okay.
who, their rights were terminated, and they don't have their children, and they were
Right.
betrayed,
Right.
and they're probably dealing with a lot of feelings. And also, I want to celebrate my friends do have children too. I mean, just to keep busy, and that's not going to be a problem with me.
Okay.
But again, Mother's Day is like any other day, and in regards to the pain I feel
Yeah.
at the betrayal, I
Yeah.
have to forgive, and I'm going
Yeah.
to do work on that every day. So Mother's
Yeah.
Day or whatever day.
Right, right, yeah. And we all have our different ways in which we do celebrate. I'll be very honest with you. That's going to be your day. The Saturday, I am going to. I live in Washington D.C., so I'm going to. Me and a girlfriend, are going to a restaurant on the Chesapeake Bay waterfront.
Mm.
So that's that day is planned. It's about an hour and a half drive each way and so forth. It's supposed to be a nice day, so that's what I'm going to do. Sunday, probably won't go to church service, which I normally do. And part of that is because of for years, even when few people didn't know, it was sometimes a celebration of back again, your own mother. Well, wear a red rose if your mother's alive,
Mm.
wear a white
Hmm.
one, so it's like all these societal things. So I'm gonna stay away from any of that. So it's no telling what I'll do that Sunday, but I'll just wake up and decide what to do. But it'll be
Yes.
my day. And specifically, I wish my own self happy Mother's Day. And quite frankly, I know a lot of other mothers. I'm not looking to say happy Mother's Day to them. This is gonna be my day. And so this is my time of just giving it to myself.
Yeah.
Just giving it to myself with that. Yeah. And sometimes we have to do that,
Hmm.
you know.
Yeah, it's so true. I mean, I think about, every year's been a bit different. And sometimes I just want to be by myself. I don't have
Mhm.
any other children. So I just want to be by myself. I remember
Mhm.
one year I went down to Los Angeles to go to a museum with my
Right.
friends. Um, Sometime, there might be some other activity.
Mhm.
Um, what I really, for me too, what I find is also helpful, and I say this to other birth moms, is if you can, maybe take a social media break that
Mhm.
weekend or that
Yes.
day, because
Yes.
that can
Good
be,
idea. Yes.
oh my gosh, so
Yeah.
it's always really easy with social media to get caught up in
Mhm.
sort of the FOMO, the fear of missing out, or the
Mhm.
comparison, or
Mhm.
even again, like, well, you might feel joyful about someone else's celebration. It's always that both and, it may
Right.
be
Right.
hurting yourself. And so it's okay to stay off of social media.
Yeah, good idea. As well as, and I have done this, I've just bought my own self flowers on Mother's Day.
Hmm. I've done
Yeah,
that too.
treat
Yep.
myself, just treat myself because we don't have control of what others may do for us or say to us, but we do have control of what we listen to, as you say, Angie, as well as what we do for ourselves. That is completely up to us. And as you say, Ash, it is an everyday thing. The key thing, I just believe because of the trauma we've been through and the trauma our children have been through, that our bodies will just relate to that and have emotions and thoughts and say about planning. I know that I have, and I speak myself, I know I have to just make sure that I do have a plan of some sort. Even if the plan is I have no plan. But like I said, that Sunday is like I'll wake up and decide what I'm going to do and won't be too because a lot of times in some days, Ashley, I don't know if you do this or not. I'll just take a day and just go somewhere by myself.
Yeah.
And whether it's by water is my healer. Water is my healer. So whether I just sit in the car, I mean, even especially during the pandemic,
Mm.
I would go to parks. In fact, I was at a park on Thursday. I'll go to parks and just sit in my car around the water. I live here in DC, and DC is a beautiful city. Sometimes I ride through downtown, the Capitol, the Monument, just sit, especially at nighttime, see the lights. So it's things I like to do. So I'll choose what I like to do. It's like this is me giving to me. This is me giving
Mhm.
back to me, not expecting anything from anyone else. But I know what I want, so I'll give it to myself. I will give it to myself. Absolutely. Yeah. So thank you all for coming. Are there any other last thoughts here?
I wanted to just in solidarity to Angie say I had a similar experience with my own mother.
Mhm.
Mm.
Mother's Day was challenging for me. Buying Mother's Day cards was a challenge.
Mhm.
Buying birthday cards for my mother was a challenge. And how that affects me as a mother, I mean, there's a profound effect. And I and so it is a gigantic experience to process all those feelings from the past, the
Yeah.
present, and then the future tripping that I can get into. But
Absolutely.
I have a good relationship with the daughter that I raised. And even in the joy of that, I still have, guilt, or rant comes from sneaking around, the birthday presents or the Mother's Day presents, and, taps me on the shoulder and says, yeah, it's not all here with you.
Mhm.
So
Right.
it is a generational, uh, I don't want to say the gift that keeps on giving because it doesn't feel much like a gift, but it's certainly trickles. It's a trickle down event. This mother event.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And on the subject of forgiveness, because and I that and forgiveness and what we've been through for people maybe not have known. It was a tough thing for me and Ashley more so, of forgiving my parents because they were not there for me.
Mhm.
It was like brick wall, as if I'm like talking to the wall. I was even saying, "Did you hear me?
Yes.
Hello, did you hear me?"
Mhm.
And
Yes.
literally, it was like, not getting nothing here. They just weren't capable. I had to come to terms with that.
Yeah.
That otherwise I was expecting them to do something that they simply just were not capable of doing. So that was the start of my forgiveness for them and accepting as best as I could. I still needed them, so it doesn't negate the fact that my need didn't go away. My need was there, but they were not there. And actually, and more recently, and I may have posted on Facebook that I lost my oldest brother. Well, this brother was the one, if you listen to my podcast, was the one that when I, again, with my mother, it was like, I had no clue what labor pains was. I was like, I felt like I was having a cramp, and it's like, okay, I guess this must be labor because it's near the date, because that's all I knew. And when my older brother was there, and I asked him to take me to the hospital, and essentially I wasn't ready, so he sent me home. Well, when he sent me home, he left. That's what caused me to have to drive myself. He just recently passed. So with some more forgiveness, and which I had already done
Mm.
before, that I had to really go through. So again, this is lifelong, all the stuff. I just put it all together in stuff that we have to deal with. And we have to stay focused and positive to know that I'm still here. I survived. It was hard, still is hard. Reunion is hard. Just getting to know the son that I love to death, and we'll go through whatever we need to go through to grow a relationship. That's what it will be. That's exactly what it would be. So forgiveness. And any of the rest of you have forgiveness you have to give to anyone?
I think that's one of the most important things for me too, was to forgive my parents and to realize that I was worthy and to forgive myself because I blamed myself all those years. And I look back now, I kept saying um, when I was writing, I kept saying, I don't want to sound like a victim. And finally, my editor looked at me and said, but you were a victim. And I thought,
Hmm.
oh my gosh, I didn't even, no. I said, no, no. And she said, I said, I've had a good life. And she said, but you weren't treated right.
Mhm.
Look
Right.
at how you've suffered over this.
Yeah. 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 We do. We have to acknowledge, number one, the trauma and pain we went through. Acknowledge it as trauma and pain. Don't say think you can just get up and just go ahead without dealing with it. Get your therapy, do your work. Thank you all, ladies, for being on today. The video will be on the Facebook page with Birth Moms Real Talk. Thank you for listening in. Tune into the podcast. Angie's is on. Laura, Ashley, and Ruby Lee is coming up with it. Mother's Day is coming in. So mothers out there, treat yourself to some flowers, to some candy, to whatever is your thing that you really want. Give that to yourself because you're responsible for taking care of yourself. If you like what you hear on Birth Moms Will Talk, support us with our Patreon. Thank you, Ashley, for being a Patreon supporter. Thank you for the rest of the Birth Moms Real Talk Village out there. We're having our Zoom on Tuesday night. Join the village. We're actually reading Karma Womb. We'll be discussing that. Well, this is it. We're all in this together. So thank you all for tuning in.
Thank you.
Thank you.